and you get the other services needed to make that a real hub. So I think the key for the policymakers at the state level and the national level today will be to do a systematic study of beyond pharmaceuticals and IT, maybe automotive, what are the next industries that India really wants to go after, and then pour resources into just one or two sites to begin with to really make it happen at scale. Now, the other side of the coin is imports. Part of the reason you run a trade deficit is that you import a lot. India historically has had tariffs on imports, but there may be opportunities as wages are rising and costs are rising in China to start importing or to start producing in India some of the things that you used to import. So that could be in processed food and agriculture, possibly in textiles, other types of manufacturing. But right now, global manufacturing is really at a crossroads because costs were very low in China, but wages have risen, all sorts of costs in China have risen. And so now even Chinese companies are setting up manufacturing production in other countries, like Vietnam and countries in Africa. And it's possible that India could capture some of that, and rather than importing goods, could start to be competitive in producing them here.
Good afternoon, ma'am. As you said, after the recession, US started producing oil and gas. Oil and gas production has been started in US. So why it isn't affecting the oil prices over the world?
Well, it's not large enough yet. Well, okay, two things. So natural gas prices are more regionally based because natural gas is only tradable when it's liquefied. And to take natural gas and create it liquefied natural gas or LNG to trade, you have to build these multi-billion-dollar industrial plants, and it takes 5 to 10 years to bring a plant online. So there is some natural gas that can be exported and imported, but natural gas is mainly produced within a country. Now, in Russia, this is what makes the Ukraine situation somewhat interesting. Russia provides all the natural gas, or a lot of it, for Western Europe, and they don't liquefy it. They've built massive pipelines, but they all run across Ukraine. So that's a geopolitical note. Oil prices globally, you're right that they haven't come down. The US at this point is not allowed to export oil. It's all consumed domestically. But what's happened is that US imports of oil have gone way down. So the US now imports the same amount of oil each year that it did back in 1980. And that was 30 years ago when the economy was about half the size it is today. But I think that the demand is being made up in other parts of the world. So China, the Middle Eastern countries like Dubai, Qatar, that are growing very rapidly, probably India. So the fact is, oil consumption is still rising quite rapidly in other parts of the world, even though in the US it's falling. And that's my best guess at why oil prices are, I think the forecasts are they're going to remain basically where they are for the next 5 years at least.
Last question.
Yeah, Susan, a very, very informative talk. Thank you for that. But as the director said, the time is too short. So we welcome you over this venue over here once again sometime later. Very good work you have done, of course, but you gave a very capsuled presentation of what you have researched upon. Now, two questions for you. One, employment generation which has happened over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. Which are the sectors where jobs have been created more prominently? Number two, see, unlike the FMCG companies of the US, like take for example Coca-Cola or whatever, see, they have banked more on emerging markets for growth, for proofing them against recession probably. But the same, the pride of America, the automobile industry, was humbled in this recession, perhaps because it didn't plan out its strategy vis-a-vis the emerging markets, whereas the Korean companies were very smart. Japanese companies were smart. They set up facilities in various places so that the cost of manufacture, transportation, everything comes down, and you have the local markets which buy those automobiles.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here. So the questions on, I mean, look, long-term emerging markets are still where the growth is. And India is very much part of this story. China, as you may know, is actually an aging economy because of their one-child policy. The labor force in China is going to stop growing in the next year or two and then start to decline. India, on the other hand, has this demographic dividend potential. And so all the major companies in the US and Western markets realize this. So yes, they continue to have some production in the US, and the US is more attractive than Europe. Europe is growing very slowly right now. And the Eurozone crisis is not really over and has not been solved. But for real strong growth, India is projected to grow at 5.5% this year and 6.5% next year. So for the real long-term growth opportunities, they realize they need to be in developing countries. India, as well as the African economies, are really up and coming. I think that actually the new actions by the Modi government to lift limits on foreign direct investment in some sectors like insurance will actually open the door, and a lot of foreign companies are interested in that. In the United States, where you have seen job creation, has been in the healthcare sector. That continues to grow. It's been in business services and sort of the types of jobs that require college graduates, not so much banking, but accounting, consulting, legal services, engineering services, architects. You've seen a little bit of pickup in manufacturing job growth, but that's only after this very large decline. So I think the job creation in the US has been broad-based, but it just hasn't been strong enough anywhere. I think the one exception has been healthcare, where that sector has continued to add jobs throughout the recession, just because people are using more and more healthcare.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I just want to know, how does US go about Bali agreement at WTO? So we have the deadline July 31st. And don't you think that there should be some permanent solution for that Food Security Act which is going on? And why does US don't address the issues highlighted by the emerging nations?
Yeah. Well, look, so I don't actually have a lot of faith that the WTO is going to produce an agreement coming up. I think that the agricultural trade talks are very complicated. I think that I think it's a legitimate, concern. We'll see what actually happens next week.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, I had a question. Like, a lot of labor is outsourced from India and other southeastern countries. So, like you just said, like America is trying to get more skilled labor in their own country. So what about the outsourcing industries in other countries, and won't it affect the economy as such of our nation?
Yeah, I mean, look, India's already, and other Southeast Asian countries are already an exporter of labor to the US. We have lots of Indians who are Indian Americans who were born in India, and also from the Philippines and other Southeast Asian nations. I think the reason, though, that immigration limits aren't expanded is that there's concern that there are so many people already in the United States who are unemployed and don't have income. So right now there is a big immigration overhaul bill in the US Congress. It doesn't look like it's going to be passed this year, but it has been a priority of the Obama administration to enact that legislation. So hopefully there's what we call a midterm election of the Congress in November, and hopefully after the new Congress comes in, they'll be able to take action on this immigration bill and expand the limits. But until the beginning of 2015, my guess is there won't be very much progress.
I request Professor Mishra to say a few words before I propose the vote of thanks.
I don't think I can add much, but US and India, they can come together. They are the two largest democracies of the world. let them come together, and as we talked, let them work together in the field of energy. Very important. US has gone way ahead, and US must share its experience with India. And that's what Obama and Manmohan Singh talked about. And we were able to get that bill through the Indian Parliament. But then still I think we have to go a long way. Number two, decidedly education is one thing. And I want to talk to all the students here. Can you work like US students? In the US, they hardly sleep and we hardly work. Can we work like that? US universities are the best in the world, there is no doubt about that. I have been to MIT, I have been to Harvard. Decidedly, I think they are far better. They are much better in the quality of students also. So can our students here, can they work like that? That's a very big challenge. Can we make Hyderabad as Harvard? That's a challenge I think we can take from what we discussed. The third thing I think is foreign trade. India has a deficit, China has a surplus. But US on the whole has a big deficit. Now the question is, what model should you follow? Should you follow the model of a surplus trade or trade deficit, trade surplus, or you should have a balanced trade? I think this is a big question. US has gone, I think US has been always a deficit country. China has been enormously surplus. India, is meandering, I think, sometime, except in 2 years. Most of the time you are deficit, country. This is the third thing. And the fourth thing, which is very important, is culture. And you find that Indian way of life and the life that you lead in the US is almost same. We have a very good family system in India. And they have a very good family system in US. You don't see the rate of divorces, which is very high in Europe, is the least, I think, in the US. That's one thing I think that's where India and US, they go together. Variety of food that you have in India, you have variety of food in the US also. Yes, but Indian trade should go beyond and should not limit itself only to agriculture, dairy products. We must go, and India and US should come together and have joint ventures and should be stepping up, not only with China, but should be stepping up production facilities in Europe and more than Europe in Africa. China has gone all the way there. Can we go and do things there? But please join me in giving a big round of applause. I don't think in 50 minutes or 1 hour anybody could have done better than what you have done. You have covered, I think, a very wide range of topics, and that too very succinctly and in a way that we could comprehend what you wanted to tell us. We must congratulate you for that. And we'll look forward, you are coming to IPE for a longer period, and I'll again insist that you should come and teach a full course at IPE. Thank you very much. I must congratulate all the students here. They asked very wonderful questions. And that's the spirit of attending a lecture. If you don't have questions, that means you are not trying to understand what one is communicating. I'm very glad, and I must congratulate. And if you please join me in giving a big round of applause to Dr. Mathur also. You can ask me why I requested you to do that. Students only ask questions, but Professor Mathur asked me a question, and there was an answer in that. That's why I told you.
Well, friends, we would like to thank the guest for sparing her valuable time, sharing her rich knowledge, and many of them may not be knowing she also planted a tree here She said, even for that sake, I will come every year. That is a symbol of nurturing Indo-US relations. She has agreed to come and teach the course also next year. We look forward to your visit, ma'am, and my students will be eagerly waiting for that opportunity too. Thank you, one and all. And before I close, I also would like to thank Khader Saab for bringing the guest here. Sir, Eid Mubarak in advance.